Let's go into the guidelines. So you're involved in writing them. How are the guidelines for menopause constructed, created? What's the process, and why are they kind of important for us to consider and important for physicians to refer to?
Perfect timing. We've got a big NHMRC grant to develop, update guidelines for health practitioners and embed them in algorithms into software. So what we've been doing, my extraordinary team, who I would like to acknowledge at Monash, we've done what's called a systematic search. So we have searched the literature for all the published guidelines, consensus statements, position statements since 2015 on menopause. And we have then used a process to identify how they've been constructed. Now, we found a small number, can't give it away yet because we haven't published the paper, but there are a small number that have been constructed using very rigorous methods. So, for example, when they've looked at what are the symptoms of menopause, they've done a search of the literature and they've done everything's based on evidence. And they've done a very robust evidence-based, and they have described in their guideline how that's been done. There are other ones where people sit around the table and say, well, I think this, and my experience is that. And there's a huge dimension. So there are the good guidelines and the ones that still come up with the same ideas, but they haven't been constructed with the same rigor. So you end up with and often the best guidelines tend to come from medical societies that have membership with a great interest in this space, and they've dedicated some money to support the development and the methodology. What we've found is that, and they're important because if they're very high caliber guidelines, they really do bring together what is known and synthesized. And they say, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is the maybe stuff, and this is what we know is bad. And what they consistently show from what we've done is that there's complete agreement in the major symptoms of menopause, which we've talked about already: the flushes, the sweats, the sleep disturbance. There's consistent agreement in that the most effective treatment for menopause is hormone replacement therapy. There's a consistent agreement that for a woman over the age of 45, if they stop having periods or their symptoms are a bit off, if they've got symptoms, you don't need to do blood tests. Women under 45, you should do blood tests. And then they start to diverge a bit about what should be given, because that's often guided by the country in which the guidelines developed and what's available. But in general, the guidelines indicate that for menopause with symptoms, the benefits of hormone therapy outweigh the risks. And then there's some subtle difference about whether hormone therapy should be used to treat osteoporosis or not, but that usually depends on whether it's approved in that country for that indication. So in general, they agree. Interestingly, they all consistently say that there's insufficient evidence that hormone therapy will prevent dementia or cognitive decline.
Which doesn't mean it doesn't, or it could
there
just be a lack of...
There is insufficient evidence to tell. You should not say to a person, you should be on hormone therapy because it'll help you protect you against dementia. The jury's out.
The jury's out. Okay. But there's not evidence to say that it doesn't or it makes it worse.
No, the jury's out. But therefore, you shouldn't prescribe it for that sole purpose.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's the hormone therapy side of things, which I want to dig into a little bit more and talk about some of the trials and breast cancer risk and all of that, the risk benefit kind of ratio. But what about in the guidelines? Do they discuss exercise or diet, or is there also insufficient evidence for those things?
There's no evidence that exercise will improve menopausal symptoms. The available data for exercise and bone health is just going for a walk around your local gardens is not going to cut it. You need to do exercise that includes impact. And you, of course, I suspect know all about that. Cognitive behaviour therapy will diminish a woman's adverse experience of hot flushes and may reduce anxiety. So all the guidelines support the use of cognitive behaviour therapy if it's accessible. It's not always accessible. It can be expensive, time-consuming, etc. The guidelines are very mixed in terms of phytoestrogens and black cohosh, really conflicting in what some say no evidence for benefit, don't recommend. Others say there may be benefit. When it comes to things like yoga, acupuncture, rhubarb, all those other things, there's consistent evidence of no benefit or lack of evidence. Acupuncture is one of them where the evidence is not there, that there's clinical trials have not shown benefit.
Does it frustrate you that it seems like there's an abundance of evidence to support hormone therapy for the right person, but some of these other things get more airtime or are pushed sort of more aggressively?
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for women who will spend a fortune on over-the-counter stuff that is of absolutely no benefit before they take hormone therapy, and you'll be horrified to know that our study of primary care physicians and pharmacists show that they acknowledge that most of the over-the-counter products are useless, but they will recommend them before hormone replacement therapy because that's what women want to hear from them.
Do you think this is a misunderstanding of the potential risks, like from an absolute point of view, putting them into context, what are they, and also perhaps not even registering the fact that, you know, a supplement, anything could come with a risk, and we probably should hold any of these compounds or, you know, to the same sort of rigor of evidence that we expect if we're assessing efficacy and safety?
Yeah, I think everything that anybody's going to take for a symptom, particularly if it's going to hit your hip pocket, and that's, you know, I've seen people spend a lot of money on nonsense. I think everything should have clear evidence and for effectiveness and safety, and if it's sold with no evidence, women should be told the truth. There's no evidence of effectiveness or safety. From our research, and these are published papers, women will go for the alternative over-the-counter stuff first because their fear is breast cancer, and it's been drummed into women over the last 2 decades that basically you're pretty wimpy if you need hormone replacement therapy, tough it out, and the symptoms are going to go away. From the point of view of the healthcare providers altogether, gynecologists, primary care physicians, pharmacists, whatever, there are 2 things. One, they feel that women want to be told, you're a really good doctor if you do the natural therapy stuff, because there's the integrative doctor down the road. They'll go and see if you don't recommend it, and makes you a really good person because you're saying, well, why don't you just try that black cohosh first, even though you think it's not going to work, and they may or may not come back, and the placebo effect's fabulous. And also, they've told us, we don't know how to prescribe HRT. We're not confident. And we go down that path, and they come back with bleeding. We don't know what to do.